My wife called me ugly in front of her friends and dumped me at a restaurant, leaving me to pay for the dinner. As she walked away, she loudly said, "A man like you should be grateful I even dated you." I smiled and calmly waited. This morning my phone blew up with 84 missed calls. You know how some nights you can feel something's off before it even starts? Yeah, that was Tuesday evening for me. I should have trusted my gut when Hazel took forever getting ready, changing outfits 3 times and checking her phone every 2 minutes like she was coordinating some kind of military operation. But I didn't. I just stood there in the hallway, adjusting the collar on that navy button-down she'd bought me last Christmas. The one she said made my eyes pop and my shoulders look broader. Funny how compliments turn into weapons when you're not looking. "You ready, babe?" I called out, jingling my keys. We were already running late for dinner with her work crew, and honestly, I wasn't thrilled about spending my evening making small talk with people who spent their days analyzing spreadsheets and complaining about office politics. But Hazel had been excited about this for weeks, kept saying how important it was that I meet the gang properly, said it would be good for us to socialize more as a couple. The drive downtown was weird. Usually, Hazel would be chattering away about her day, asking me about mine, or playing DJ with the radio. Instead, she sat there scrolling through her phone, lips pressed tight like she was holding back something. When I asked if everything was cool, she just nodded and said she was nervous about work stuff. I bought it. Hell, I even reached over and squeezed her hand at a red light, told her she was going to be fine, that her coworkers were lucky to have her. Marco's Italian Kitchen was one of those places that tries too hard to be fancy. Dim lighting, cloth napkins, waiters who introduce themselves like they're auditioning for Broadway. We'd been there once before for our first anniversary, and it had been perfect. Romantic, even. But walking in that night felt different, like stepping into a courtroom where everyone already knew the verdict except me. Her friends were already seated when we arrived. Ivy, Jessica, and some guy named Brad from accounting who I'd met maybe twice. They all looked up when we approached, and I swear I caught this split-second exchange of glances between them. You know that look people give each other when they're in on something you're not? Yeah, that one. "Hey everyone," I said, pulling out Hazel's chair like I always did. She sat down without looking at me, immediately diving into conversation about some project deadline. I ordered a beer, tried to join in when they talked about their boss, made a few jokes that got polite laughs. Everything seemed normal on the surface, but underneath, it felt like sitting on a fault line. The food came, some overpriced pasta dish that tasted like it came from a box, and that's when things started going sideways. Ivy was telling this story about her weekend, and somehow it shifted to relationships, then to marriage, then to settling down with the right person. The whole time, Hazel kept shooting these looks across the table, like she was telegraphing something to her friends that I couldn't decode. Then Jessica, sweet Jessica who'd always been friendly to me at company parties, suddenly looked right at me and said, "So, what do you do again?" Like she'd forgotten. Like we hadn't talked about my job managing logistics at the warehouse just 2 months ago at their Christmas party. I explained again, keeping it light, but I could feel the temperature drop a few degrees. That's when Hazel finally looked at me, really looked at me. And what I saw in her eyes wasn't love or affection or even basic respect. It was something cold and calculating, like she was measuring me against some invisible standard and finding me lacking. "Honestly," she said, her voice carrying across our little section of the restaurant, You're just ugly." The words hit me like a slap, not because they were true or untrue, but because of how casually she said them. Like she was commenting on the weather, like she was ordering dessert. Her friends started giggling. Actual giggling, like we were in middle school, and I felt my face flush hot. But Hazel wasn't done. She stood up, knocked her chair back a little, and tossed her napkin down on her half-eaten plate. "A man like you," she said, her voice getting louder, making sure the couple at the next table could hear every word, "should be grateful I even dated you." Then she walked out, just like that. No explanation, no goodbye, no acknowledgement of the 2 years we'd spent building a life together. Her friends scrambled to follow her, leaving me sitting there with for barely touched entrees and a table full of questions I couldn't answer. The waiter appeared at my elbow like a ghost, looking as uncomfortable as I felt. "Will you be needing the check, sir?" $428. That's what our last meal together cost me. I paid it with my credit card, The one that still had Christmas shopping debt on it from buying Hazel that expensive jewelry she'd been hinting about for months. My hands were steady as I signed the receipt, added a generous tip because none of this was the waiter's fault. The weird thing is, I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt empty, like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything that made me who I was. I sat there for another 10 minutes, sipping the rest of my beer, watching other couples laugh and share dessert and be normal. But somewhere in that silence, something shifted. Maybe it was the way the elderly man at the corner table smiled at his wife when she spilled sauce on her blouse. Maybe it was realizing that Hazel had never looked at me like that, not even in the beginning. Whatever it was, I felt myself smile. Not a happy smile, but something else. Something patient. I walked out of Marco's Italian kitchen that night knowing my life had just changed forever. I just didn't know yet whether it was for better or worse. The silence in my car was deafening. Not the comfortable kind of quiet you get when you're cruising with the windows down on a Sunday afternoon, but that heavy, suffocating silence that presses against your eardrums and makes you want to scream just to break it. I sat there in the parking lot outside Marco's for maybe 20 minutes, engine running, heat blasting, staring at the neon sign flickering against the windshield. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since I left the restaurant, but I couldn't bring myself to look at it. Part of me hoped it was Hazel calling to apologize, to say she'd lost her mind for a hot minute and wanted to come home and talk it through like adults. But deep down, I knew better. The look in her eyes when she called me ugly wasn't temporary insanity. That was planning. That was deliberate. The drive home felt like I was moving underwater. Every traffic light lasted forever. Every turn felt wrong, like I was navigating through someone else's life. I kept catching glimpses of myself in the rearview mirror. Same brown eyes, same slightly crooked nose I'd broken playing high school football, same face I'd been living with for 32 years. When exactly had I become ugly to the woman who used to trace my jawline with her finger when she thought I was sleeping? Our apartment building looked different when I pulled into the parking garage. Smaller somehow, like it had shrunk while I was gone, or maybe I was seeing it through different eyes. I took the elevator up to the 7th floor, walked down that familiar hallway with the burnt-out light fixture we'd been complaining to management about for months. Funny how you notice details like that when your world's falling apart. Inside, everything was exactly how we'd left it. Hazel's coffee cup still sitting on the kitchen counter with a ring of lipstick around the rim. Her jacket draped over the back of the couch. That stupid throw pillow she'd insisted we needed because it tied the room together. All the little pieces of a life we'd built together, just sitting there like nothing had changed. I loosened my tie and sank into my recliner. The one Hazel always said was too big for the living room, but that I'd refused to get rid of because my dad had given it to me when I moved out. It felt like the only honest thing in the apartment. I stared at the wall where we'd hung our wedding photos. All those smiling faces looking back at me like they belonged to strangers. That's when it hit me. Really hit me. Not the anger or the hurt, but the questions. How long had she felt this way? How many times had she looked at me across the dinner table or in bed next to her and thought about how grateful I should be? How many conversations with her friends had started with complaints about being stuck with someone like me? I started replaying our relationship like a movie, looking for clues I'd missed. The way she'd started dressing up more for work, but staying in sweats at home. How she'd stopped posting pictures of us together on social media, but kept taking selfies. The nights she'd roll away from me in bed, claiming she was too tired, but I'd catch her on her phone under the covers an hour later. Around midnight, I got up and made myself a sandwich, turkey and Swiss on the good bread she bought from that overpriced bakery downtown. Ate it standing at the kitchen counter, looking out at the city lights, wondering if this was what freedom felt like or if I was just numb. My phone lit up on the counter. A text from Malcolm, my buddy from work. Dude, are you okay? Saw Hazel's post. Post? What post? I hadn't checked Instagram since before dinner, but suddenly my hands were shaking as I opened the app. There it was, posted 2 hours ago. A selfie of Hazel at some bar downtown. Makeup perfect, smile bright, surrounded by her work friends. The caption read, "Freedom looks good on me, nail polish sparkles, #new chapter, #living my best life." Freedom. Like I'd been holding her prisoner for 2 years. Like our marriage had been some kind of jail sentence she'd finally escaped. The comments were already piling up, heart emojis, and "you go girl," and "so proud of you," from people who didn't even know what had happened. People who thought they were celebrating her liberation from. What? From me? I scrolled through her other recent posts. Pictures from work events where I wasn't invited. Dinner with friends I'd never met. Shopping trips and spa days and girls' nights out that somehow never included any mention of having a husband at home. It was like I'd been erased from her life piece by piece, so gradually that I hadn't even noticed. But here's the thing that really got to me. In every single photo, she looked happy. Not fake happy or trying too hard happy, but genuinely radiant. Like the version of herself she was when we first met, back when she used to laugh at my terrible jokes and steal bites of my food and text me random thoughts throughout the day. When had she stopped being that person with me? When had I become the thing standing between her and her happiness instead of the person who added to it? I closed Instagram and opened the Notes app on my phone. Started typing, then stopped. Started again. What was I even trying to say? Sorry for being ugly? Sorry for not being good enough? Sorry for thinking we were building something together while she was planning her escape route? At 2 a.m., I finally put the phone down and opened the notebook I kept on the coffee table, the one where I sometimes jotted down grocery lists or phone numbers or random thoughts. But this time, I wrote something different. What now? 2 words. But they felt like the first honest thing I'd said all day. Not, how do I get her back? Or what did I do wrong? Just what now? Because sitting there in that quiet apartment, surrounded by the remnants of a life that apparently meant more to me than it did to her, I realized I had a choice to make. I could spend the next few weeks or months trying to figure out where we went wrong, analyzing every conversation and argument and moment of distance. I could call her friends, show up at her work, try to convince her that we were worth fighting for. I could grovel and apologize and promise to change into whatever version of myself she wanted me to be. Or I could accept that sometimes people grow apart, that sometimes love isn't enough, that sometimes the person you thought you'd spend forever with decides you're not worth the effort anymore. I could let her have her freedom and figure out what mine looked like. The apartment was still quiet, but it felt different now. Not empty, just waiting, like it was holding its breath to see what I'd do next. I woke up on the couch at 6:47 a.m. to my phone going absolutely ballistic. Not the gentle buzz of a text or two, but that rapid-fire vibration that means someone's either dead or in serious trouble. My neck was killing me from sleeping at a weird angle, and for about 3 seconds, I forgot everything that had happened. Then reality came crashing back like a freight train. 84 missed calls. 84. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, trying to make sense of the caller ID list scrolling down my screen. Hazel, 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 Ivy, Hazel, some number I didn't recognize. Tasha, Hazel's cousin. Hazel, Conrad, her boss. Hazel again. The timestamps showed they'd started around 5 a.m. and hadn't stopped. My first thought was that something terrible had happened. Maybe Hazel had been in an accident or someone in her family was hurt, and despite everything that went down last night, they needed me. That's the thing about caring about someone for 4 years. You don't just switch it off because they hurt you. Your instincts still kick in. I was about to call Hazel back when my doorbell rang. Not the polite single ring of a delivery guy, but that aggressive, repeated buzzing that means someone's either really excited or really pissed off. I stumbled to the door in yesterday's wrinkled shirt and pants, expecting to see Hazel standing there ready to either apologize or continue whatever fight we'd apparently started. Instead, it was Malcolm, holding 2 cups of coffee from the bodega downstairs and wearing the kind of expression people get when they're about to deliver bad news. Bro, he said, pushing past me into the apartment, you might want to sit down. Man, it's not even 7 in the morning. What the hell is going on? Malcolm handed me one of the coffees and sat down on the edge of the couch where I'd spent the night. He was still in his work clothes from yesterday, which meant he'd probably been up all night too. Malcolm worked security at the office building where Hazel's company leased 3 floors, which was how we'd met in the first place. He knew all the office gossip, sometimes before the people involved did. So you know how Hazel's been telling everyone at work that she's married to some hotshot investment analyst? I nearly choked on my coffee. What? I work in logistics. She knows that. Everyone knows that. Yeah, well, apparently not everyone. See, Hazel's been painting this picture of her home life to her coworkers, talking about your portfolio management strategies and your client meetings and how you're always jetting off to consult with Fortune 500 companies. I stared at him. Dude, I coordinate shipping schedules and manage inventory databases. The most exotic place I travel to is the warehouse in Jersey. I know that, and you know that, but her entire office thinks you're some Wall Street big shot. She even showed them fake business cards with your name on them from some investment firm that doesn't exist. The room started spinning a little. Why would she do that? Malcolm rubbed his forehead like he was getting a headache. Because she was up for a promotion. Senior analyst position. Big raise, corner office, the whole thing. And part of her pitch to management was about her stable home life and how her husband's success in finance would make her a valuable networking asset for the company. You're kidding me. I wish I was. But here's where it gets really messy. That dinner last night. The one where she publicly humiliated you and walked out. Yeah, I remember it pretty clearly. Well, she told her friends it was supposed to be a celebration dinner. She was planning to announce her promotion and introduce her successful husband to the team. Only problem is, she didn't get the promotion. Found out yesterday afternoon that they gave it to someone else. So instead of being the successful rising star with the perfect marriage, she was just regular Hazel with a warehouse manager husband. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they made was uglier than I'd imagined. So she decided to dump me publicly instead? That's what it looks like. Except her plan backfired spectacularly. How? Malcolm pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot of what looked like an internal company message board. Because Conrad, her boss, saw her Instagram post last night. The freedom looks good on me one. And he started asking questions about why she was celebrating being free from her husband when she'd just spent the last 6 months telling them how supportive and successful you were. I felt sick. Jesus Christ. It gets worse. Turns out, when Conrad started digging, he found out about the fake business cards and the lies about your job and the fact that she'd been using your supposed success as part of her argument for why she deserved the promotion. She didn't get fired, did she? Despite everything, I didn't want Hazel to lose her job. Not fired, but she's on probation. Conrad called it misrepresentation of personal circumstances for professional gain. Basically, corporate speak for we can't trust you anymore. I sat back in my chair, trying to process everything. The woman I'd been married to for 2 years had been living a double life, using a fictional version of me to advance her career, and when that fell apart, she decided to publicly destroy the real me instead of admitting the truth. There's more, Malcolm said quietly. How can there be more? She's been telling people you were abusive, controlling, that you wouldn't let her have friends or go out without you. She's painting last night as her finally finding the courage to leave an unhealthy relationship. The coffee cup slipped from my hands and hit the floor, sending brown liquid across the hardwood. What? I heard it myself this morning when I was doing rounds. She was on the phone in the lobby, crying, telling someone about how you used to check her phone and isolate her from her friends, and how she was so scared to leave because you'd threatened her. I stood up so fast the room tilted. That's insane. Malcolm, you know me. I've never laid a hand on her. I've never even raised my voice at her. I know, man. I know. But she's getting ahead of the story, trying to control the narrative before word gets out about what really happened. My phone started buzzing again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but I answered it anyway. Hello. Is this David? A woman's voice, professional but warm. Yeah, who's this? This is Riley Chun from Morrison & Associates. I work with Hazel. I think we need to talk. I looked at Malcolm, who was already nodding like he knew this call was coming. About what? About the truth. And about what she's been telling people about you. Why? After I hung up, Malcolm and I sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the coffee stains spread across the floor. Finally, he spoke up. You know what the crazy thing is? All this time, she was ashamed of who you really are. But the person she made up? The successful finance guy? That guy's not even half as decent as the real you. I looked around the apartment. Our apartment that suddenly felt like a crime scene where my life had been murdered. Yeah, I said. Too bad decent doesn't pay the bills. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't the real problem. The real problem was that I'd been living with a stranger who wore my wife's face, and I was just now finding out who she really was. I spent the next 4 hours pacing my apartment like a caged animal, checking my phone every 2 minutes, and trying to figure out what the hell Riley Chun could possibly want to tell me. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place her face. Had I met her at one of Hazel's work events? Was she one of the people who'd laughed at me last night? By the time noon rolled around, I'd changed clothes 3 times and rehearsed about a dozen different conversations in my head. Part of me wondered if this was some kind of setup. Maybe Hazel had sent Riley to gather ammunition for whatever story she was spinning about our marriage. But another part of me, the part that was tired of living in the dark, needed to know what was really going on. We'd agreed to meet at a little diner called Murphy's about 6 blocks from Hazel's office. The kind of place with red vinyl booths and waitresses who've been working there since the Carter administration. I got there 15 minutes early and grabbed a corner booth where I could see the door, ordered coffee, and waited. Riley walked in at exactly 12:30, and I recognized her immediately. She was the woman from Hazel's company Christmas party last year. The one who'd complimented my terrible joke about spreadsheets and actually seemed to mean it. Asian American, probably in her early 30s, with shoulder-length black hair and the kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly what you're worth. She was wearing a navy blazer and jeans, professional but not trying too hard. "David." She approached my table with a cautious smile. "That's me. Riley, right?" "Right." She slid into the booth across from me and immediately ordered coffee when the waitress appeared. "Thanks for meeting me on such short notice. I wasn't sure you'd want to talk to anyone from Hazel's work right now. Honestly, I'm not sure what I want. But I figure I need to hear whatever you came here to say." Riley wrapped her hands around her coffee mug like she was trying to warm them, even though it was probably 70 degrees in the diner. "First, I owe you an apology. For last night. I was at that dinner, and when Hazel said those things to you, I laughed. I actually laughed, and I've been sick about it ever since." I studied her face, looking for signs that this was an act, but all I saw was genuine regret. "You thought it was funny that my wife called me ugly in front of a restaurant full of people?" "No, God, no. I thought it was a joke. Like, a really dark, twisted joke between married people. You know how some couples have that weird banter where they roast each other? I thought that's what was happening. When I realized she was serious, when I saw your face." She shook her head. "I wanted to disappear. But you didn't say anything." "No, I didn't. And that makes me complicit. That makes me just as bad as the people who were actually in on it." "In on what, exactly?" Riley took a long sip of her coffee, like she was buying time to figure out how to explain something complicated. "David, how much do you know about what Hazel's been telling people at work?" "According to my friend Malcolm, quite a lot. Apparently, I'm a successful investment analyst who jets around the country making deals with Fortune 500 companies." "That's actually the tip of the iceberg." Riley reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. "I printed some stuff out. Screenshots of emails, internal messages, things she's posted on the company's Slack channel. I probably shouldn't be showing you this, but after last night, I don't really care about company policy anymore." She opened the folder and spread several printed pages across the table between us. The first one was an email thread from 3 months ago where Hazel was discussing her husband's latest acquisition deal and how it might impact their weekend plans. The second was a Slack conversation where she complained about having to attend another one of David's client dinners, but mentioned how the networking opportunities were worth it. "Jesus," I muttered, scanning the documents. She really committed to this story. "Oh, it gets worse. Look at this one." Riley showed me a printout of what looked like an internal company survey about work-life balance. In response to a question about family support, Hazel had written a paragraph about how grateful she was to have a husband who understood the demands of her career because his own work in private equity and investment consulting kept him equally busy. Private equity? I managed shipping manifests for a warehouse operation. I know. And the really messed up part is, she was good at her job on her own merit. Hazel's smart. She's organized. She knows the business inside and out. She didn't need to create this elaborate fantasy about her home life to succeed. But for some reason, she did it anyway. I leaned back in the booth, trying to process everything. Malcolm told me she was up for a promotion. Senior analyst position. And yes, part of her pitch to management included talking about her stable family foundation and how her husband's connections in the finance world could benefit the company. She even mentioned the possibility of bringing in new clients through your professional network. A network that doesn't exist, right? And when the promotion went to someone else, someone who, by the way, was more qualified and didn't base their application on fictional spousal achievements, she lost it. Riley pulled out another sheet of paper, this one a screenshot of text messages. These are from yesterday afternoon, right after she found out about the promotion. They're between her and Ivy, who sits in the cubicle next to mine. I read the messages, my stomach dropping with each line. Hazel, didn't get it. They gave it to Peterson. Asterisk. Ivy, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do? Asterisk. Hazel, I don't know. Everyone's going to find out I made up half the stuff about David. Asterisk. Ivy. Maybe it's time to just tell the truth? Asterisk. Hazel, the truth is embarrassing. I'm married to a warehouse manager who wears the same 3 shirts to every social event and thinks Olive Garden is fine dining. Asterisk. Ivy. Hazel. Asterisk. Hazel, I'm done. I'm done pretending this is the life I wanted. I'm done being grateful for crumbs. Asterisk. She sent these an hour before your dinner, Riley said quietly. This wasn't a spontaneous meltdown, David. This was planned. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. She planned to humiliate me in public because she didn't get a promotion at work. It looks that way. But here's what she didn't count on. People talk. And when word got around about what happened at dinner, and then Conrad saw her Instagram post celebrating her freedom, he started asking questions. What kind of questions? The kind that led to him discovering the fake business cards she'd been showing people, and the made-up stories about your job, and the fact that she'd been essentially lying to the entire company for months about her personal life. Riley leaned forward, her expression serious. David, she's in real trouble at work. Conrad called her into his office this morning and put her on administrative probation. She could lose her job over this. And that's why she's telling people I was abusive? To cover her tracks. That's my guess. If she can paint herself as the victim of a controlling relationship, then maybe people will be more sympathetic about the lies. Maybe they'll see it as her trying to protect herself instead of her trying to advance her career through deception. I stared at the documents spread across the table, evidence of a double life I'd never suspected. Riley, can I ask you something? Sure. Why are you telling me this? Why get involved? You barely know me. She was quiet for a moment, stirring her coffee with a plastic spoon. Because I've been where you are. Not exactly, but close enough. My ex-husband used to tell people I was a pharmaceutical sales rep instead of a data analyst because he thought it sounded more impressive. He'd make up stories about my job, my salary, my responsibilities, all to make himself look better by association. What happened? I found out when someone at a party started asking me about drug samples and commission structures, and I had no idea what they were talking about. Turns out he'd been using my fictional career to network his way into business opportunities. When I confronted him, he said he was helping my image and that I should be grateful he was making me sound more successful than I really was. That's awful. The point is, when someone you love starts treating your real life like it's not good enough for their public image, it's not about you. It's about them. And what Hazel did to you last night, that was about her shame and her insecurity and her messed up priorities. It wasn't about you not being good enough. It was about her not being brave enough to own her real life. Riley gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. I brought these because I thought you deserved to know the truth. All of it. And because I wanted you to know that not everyone who was there last night thinks you deserved what happened to you. So what happens now? Now you decide what you want to do with this information. You can use it to defend yourself if she keeps spreading lies about you. Or you can just walk away and let her dig her own grave. Either way, you'll know you're not the problem here. As Riley got up to leave, she paused and looked back at me. For what it's worth, David, that joke you made about spreadsheets at the Christmas party, it actually was pretty funny. And you seem like a decent guy who deserves better than being someone's secret shame. After she left, I sat in that diner booth for another hour, staring at the folder she'd left behind. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about my wife, about myself, had been turned upside down in the span of 24 hours. But for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I didn't feel like the victim anymore. I felt like someone who finally had the whole story. And that, I was beginning to realize, was the most powerful thing of all. I was sitting on my couch Thursday evening, eating leftover Chinese takeout straight from the container and trying to make sense of a Netflix show I wasn't really watching when my phone rang. The caller ID made me freeze mid-chew. Elaine, Hazel's mom. For a split second, I considered letting it go to voicemail. Hazel's family had always been good to me, but after everything that had gone down this week, I wasn't sure where I stood with them. Did they know about the restaurant incident? Had Hazel fed them the same lies she'd been telling her coworkers? I picked up on the fourth ring. Hey, Elaine. David. Sweetheart, how are you? Her voice was warm and cheerful, the same tone she'd used when calling to invite us to Sunday dinners or ask if we could help her move furniture. I was just finalizing the guest list for Hazel's birthday dinner this Saturday, and I wanted to make sure you hadn't forgotten. I nearly choked on my lo mein. Birthday dinner? At Romano's, 7 o'clock. You know how she loves that place. I made reservations for 12, the whole family plus a few close friends. I'm so excited to finally hear about this big announcement you two have been planning. My brain went completely blank. Big announcement. Oh, don't be coy with me, Elaine laughed. Hazel's been dropping hints for weeks about how you've got something special planned for her birthday. She's been absolutely glowing lately, saying this might be the best birthday she's ever had. I set down my takeout container and rubbed my forehead. Elaine, I think there might be some confusion. No confusion at all, honey. She specifically told me to make sure you knew it was formal dress and that you'd probably want to say a few words during dinner. I even ordered a special cake from that bakery she likes downtown. The room started spinning. Hazel had told her family we were still together. Not only that, but she'd set up some expectation that I was planning a big romantic gesture for her birthday. What kind of game was she playing? David? You still there? Yeah, sorry. I was just making sure I had the details right. Romano's at 7, Saturday night. Perfect. Oh, and David, I know things have been stressful with work lately, but seeing how happy you make my daughter means the world to me. Whatever you've got planned for Saturday, I know it's going to be wonderful. After we hung up, I sat there staring at my phone like it had grown fangs. Work stress? Happy daughter? What alternate universe was Elaine living in where her daughter hadn't publicly humiliated me 3 days ago? I called Malcolm immediately. Dude, you're not going to believe this. I started and filled him in on the conversation. Wait, so Hazel's been telling her family you're still together? Apparently. And not just together. Apparently, I've got some big romantic surprise planned for her birthday. That's insane. What are you going to do? I was quiet for a moment, thinking. I'm going to go. Are you out of your mind? Think about it, Malcolm. She's been playing games, right? Making up stories, controlling narratives, trying to make me look like the bad guy while she comes out smelling like roses. But this is different. She's trapped herself. How do you figure? Because her family doesn't know what really happened. They think we're this happy couple with big news to share. So either she has to tell them the truth about what she did, or she has to keep pretending everything's fine. And if she keeps pretending, then I get to control what happens next. This sounds like a terrible idea. Probably. But I'm tired of being the only one surprised by what's happening in my own life. It's time for Hazel to be the one caught off guard. The next day, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went shopping for clothes. Nothing crazy, just a decent charcoal suit from Men's Warehouse and a tie that didn't have coffee stains on it. The salesman kept trying to upsell me on accessories, but I wasn't going to Romano's to impress anyone. I was going to set the record straight. Friday night, I called Riley. I need to ask you a favor, I said. And you can absolutely say no. What kind of favor? Would you be willing to come with me to Hazel's birthday dinner tomorrow night? As backup, there was a long pause. David, are you sure that's a good idea? Probably not. But I need someone there who knows the truth about what's been happening. Someone who can verify the facts if things get ugly. What exactly are you planning to do? Tell the truth. All of it. About the lies she's been telling at work, about what happened at the restaurant, about the fake promotion story. Her family deserves to know who they're really celebrating. And you think having me there will help? I think having a witness will keep everyone honest. Including me. Riley was quiet for another moment. Okay, but I want you to promise me something. What? Promise me this isn't about revenge. Promise me this is about justice. I thought about that distinction. Revenge would be showing up drunk and making a scene. Revenge would be airing her dirty laundry just to hurt her back. But justice? Justice was making sure the truth came to light. Justice was refusing to let her rewrite history at my expense. It's about justice, I said. I promise. Then I'll be there. But David? Yeah. We're the charcoal suit. If we're going to tell the truth, we might as well look good doing it. Saturday evening, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting my tie for the third time. The man looking back at me didn't look like someone who'd been called ugly and worthless 3 days ago. He looked like someone who knew exactly what he was worth. My phone buzzed with a text from Riley. Outside your building. Ready to do this. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. For the first time all week, I was actually looking forward to dinner. Romano's was exactly the kind of place you'd expect for a family birthday celebration. Soft lighting, white tablecloths, and the smell of garlic bread that hit you the moment you walked through the door. I'd been here with Hazel's family maybe a dozen times over the years, always for special occasions. Birthdays, anniversaries, graduations. The kind of moments that were supposed to matter. Riley and I arrived at 6:55, fashionably early, but not suspiciously so. She looked professional in a black dress and blazer, carrying a small clutch that I knew contained printed copies of all the evidence she'd shown me at the diner. My backup plan, just in case things went sideways. The hostess led us to a large round table in the back corner where Hazel's family was already gathering. Her parents, Elaine and Robert, were there looking distinguished as always. Robert in his favorite navy suit, Elaine in a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her brother Lucas had driven down from Boston with his girlfriend Sarah. Her cousin Tasha was there with her husband Mike, and her Aunt Dorothy was already working on what looked like her second glass of wine. David, Elaine practically bounced out of her chair to hug me. You look so handsome. And who's this lovely young woman? This is Riley, I said, keeping my voice steady. She works with Hazel. I thought it would be nice to have someone from her office here for her birthday. Riley smiled and shook hands around the table, introducing herself as a colleague and friend. The family welcomed her warmly, the way they always did with new people. It was one of the things I'd always loved about Hazel's family. They made everyone feel included. Where's the birthday girl? Robert asked, checking his watch. She'll be here any minute, I said, taking the seat they'd saved for me directly across from where Hazel would sit. Strategic positioning. You know how she likes to make an entrance. Lucas laughed. Remember her Sweet 16? She was 2 hours late to her own party because she couldn't decide between the blue dress and the red one. And she ended up wearing the black one, Sarah added with a grin. We made small talk for a few minutes. Lucas's new job, Dorothy's trip to Europe, Tasha's pregnancy news that had everyone excited. Normal family conversation, the kind I'd been part of for 2 years and thought I'd be part of for the rest of my life. It felt surreal, sitting there pretending everything was fine while knowing what was coming. At 7:15, Hazel walked in. She looked stunning, I had to admit. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, wearing a red dress I'd never seen before that probably cost more than she made in a week. David, she said, her voice carefully neutral. I wasn't sure you'd make it. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, standing up to pull out her chair like I always did. Happy birthday, Hazel. She sat down stiffly, her eyes darting between me and Riley, clearly trying to figure out what game was being played. The family didn't seem to notice the tension. They were too busy fussing over the birthday girl, complimenting her dress, asking about work, the usual family dinner routine. Dinner started normally enough. We ordered appetizers, shared bread, listened to Robert tell the same story about Hazel's first job that he told at every family gathering. Hazel played her part perfectly, laughing at the right moments, thanking everyone for coming, acting like the loving daughter and wife everyone expected her to be. But I could see the cracks forming. The way she kept glancing at her phone, the way she barely touched her food, the way she kept shooting questioning looks at Riley, trying to figure out why a coworker was crashing her family dinner. Around 8:30, after the main course was cleared and before dessert arrived, Elaine tapped her wine glass with her fork. Before we bring out the cake, she announced, I think David has something special he'd like to share with everyone. The table went quiet, all eyes turning to me. Hazel's face went completely white. Actually, she said quickly, maybe we should wait until. No, I said, standing up slowly. I think now is perfect. I looked around the table at all these people who'd welcomed me into their family, who'd invited me to holidays and birthdays and Sunday dinners. People who deserved to know the truth about what their daughter and sister had become. First, I said, I want to thank you all for including me tonight. Hazel's family has always been incredibly kind to me, and that means more than you know. Murmurs of agreement around the table. Hazel was gripping her napkin so tightly her knuckles were white. The thing is, I continued, I'm not actually here to make an announcement. I'm here because Hazel told you I would be, and I didn't want you to be disappointed when I didn't show up. Robert frowned. I'm not sure I understand. Dad, please, Hazel said, her voice getting higher. David's just being modest. He doesn't like being the center of attention. That's true, I said. I don't. Which is why it was so surprising when Hazel made me the center of attention at a restaurant downtown 3 nights ago. The temperature at the table seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elaine looked confused. Lucas leaned forward, sensing drama. David, Hazel said, her voice taking on a warning tone. Maybe we should discuss this privately. Actually, I think everyone here deserves to know what happened. Don't you agree, Riley? Riley nodded and reached into her clutch. I think honesty is always the best policy. Who exactly are you? Tasha asked, looking between Riley and Hazel. I'm Riley Chun from Morrison & Associates. I work with Hazel, and I was at the dinner David's referring to. Hazel stood up abruptly. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Maybe we should. Sit down, Hazel, Robert said quietly. His voice carried the kind of authority that comes from being a father for 30 years. Let David finish. Hazel sat back down, but she looked like she was ready to bolt at any second. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment of truth. 3 nights ago, Hazel invited me to dinner with her coworkers. I thought it was just a social thing, a chance for me to meet the people she works with. But it turns out, it was something else entirely. I looked directly at Hazel. Her eyes were pleading with me to stop, but I was done protecting her feelings at the expense of my own dignity. She stood up in the middle of that restaurant, in front of everyone, and told me I was ugly. She said that a man like me should be grateful she even dated me. Then she walked out, leaving me with a $400 bill and a table full of strangers. The silence that followed was deafening. Elaine's mouth was hanging open. Lucas looked like he'd been slapped. Dorothy set down her wine glass with a sharp clink. That's not, Hazel started. It's not what? I interrupted. It's not true. Riley was there. She saw the whole thing. She can verify every word. Riley nodded solemnly. I'm afraid David's telling the truth. And there's more you all need to know. More. Robert's voice was dangerously quiet. The reason for that dinner, the lies she's been telling at work, the fake promotion she claimed to get, all of it. Your daughter has been living a double life, and David has been paying the price for her deception. Hazel finally cracked. You don't understand. None of you understand what it's like to be married to someone who. Someone who what? I asked. Someone who loves you? Someone who supports your dreams? Someone who works an honest job and comes home to you every night? Someone who's beneath me, she shouted, then immediately looked horrified that she'd said it out loud. The table erupted. Elaine gasped. Robert stood up so fast his chair fell over. Lucas started swearing under his breath. But I just smiled. Because finally, Hazel had told the truth about how she really felt. And everyone had heard it. The words hung in the air like smoke from a car crash, thick, choking, and impossible to ignore. Someone who's beneath me. Even Hazel seemed shocked that she'd said it out loud, her hand flying to her mouth, like she could somehow stuff the words back in. But it was too late. The truth was out there now, naked and ugly and undeniable. Robert slowly picked up his chair and sat back down, his face the color of concrete. He was a man who'd worked construction for 30 years before starting his own contracting business, someone who understood the value of honest work and decent people. Hearing his daughter talk about anyone being beneath her was probably like watching her spit on everything he'd taught her. Hazel Marie Patterson, Elaine whispered, using Hazel's full name the way she only did when she was furious or heartbroken. What has gotten into you? Hazel looked around the table like a trapped animal, seeing nothing but disappointed faces and closed-off body language. Lucas had his arms crossed and was shaking his head. Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear. Tasha was staring at her cousin like she'd never seen her before. Even Dorothy, who'd always been Hazel's favorite aunt, had turned away. You don't understand, Hazel said, her voice getting desperate. You don't know what it's like to work in that office, with those people. They all have successful husbands, important careers, nice cars, expensive clothes. And what do I have? A husband who stocks shelves and thinks Applebee's is fine dining. I don't stock shelves, I said quietly. I manage logistics and coordinate supply chains. And I've never thought Applebee's was fine dining. But I've also never been ashamed to eat there with you. That's the problem. Hazel snapped. You're satisfied with mediocre. You're happy being ordinary. You don't want more. You don't strive for better. You just accept whatever life gives you. Riley cleared her throat softly. Can I say something? All eyes turned to her. She pulled out the folder she'd brought and set it on the table. I've been working with Hazel for 2 years, she began, her voice steady and professional. And in that time, I've watched her create an entirely fictional version of her marriage and her husband's career. She's told our entire office that David is a successful investment analyst who travels the country making deals with Fortune 500 companies. Robert's eyebrows shot up. Investment analyst? She even had business cards made up with David's name on them, listing him as a partner at a firm that doesn't exist. She's used these lies to network with clients, to justify her own career ambitions, and to try to secure a promotion she didn't earn. Riley opened the folder and spread out some of the documents. These are emails and messages where Hazel complained about having to attend David's client dinners and how his success was both a blessing and a burden for her career. Elaine picked up one of the printed emails, her face growing more confused with each line. Hazel, what is this? Why would you make up stories about David's job? Because the truth is embarrassing. Hazel shouted. Do you know what it's like to sit in meetings with women whose husbands are doctors and lawyers and CEOs, and have to explain that mine manages inventory at a warehouse? Do you know how that makes me look? It makes you look like you're married to a hard-working man with a good job, Lucas said, his voice tight with anger. Dad worked construction. Hazel, was he beneath Mom? That's different. How? How is it different? Hazel opened her mouth, then closed it. She didn't have an answer because there wasn't one. The only difference was her own twisted perspective on what made someone valuable. The promotion she mentioned, Riley continued, she was passed over for it. Not because she wasn't qualified, but because when her boss started fact-checking some of her claims about her personal life, he discovered the lies. She's currently on probation at work. Jesus Christ, Hazel, Tasha muttered. So the dinner 3 nights ago, I said, picking up the thread, wasn't a celebration of her success. It was supposed to be her big exit strategy. Dump the embarrassing husband publicly, reinvent herself as a successful single woman, and hope nobody connected the dots about all the lies she'd been telling. Robert was staring at his daughter like he'd never seen her before. You planned this? You planned to humiliate your husband in public. I didn't plan anything. Hazel protested. It just happened. I was upset about work, and I was frustrated with our relationship, and I just snapped. Riley reached into her folder again and pulled out another sheet of paper. Actually, these text messages between you and Ivy from the day of the dinner suggest otherwise. She slid the paper across to Robert, who read it silently. His face grew darker with each line. I'm done pretending this is the life I wanted, he read aloud. I'm done being grateful for crumbs. You sent this an hour before dinner, Hazel. An hour before you stood up in that restaurant and called your husband ugly. The fight went out of Hazel all at once. She slumped in her chair like someone had cut her strings. You all just don't understand the pressure I'm under. The expectations. What expectations? Elaine asked, her voice breaking a little. We never expected you to marry rich, honey. We never cared what David did for a living. We cared that he was good to you, that he made you happy, that he treated you with respect. Well, maybe your expectations weren't high enough, Hazel said bitterly. That did it. Robert stood up again, and this time he didn't sit back down. You know what, Hazel? You're right. Our expectations weren't high enough. We expected you to be kind. We expected you to be honest. We expected you to treat the people who love you with basic human decency. Apparently, that bar was set too low. He pulled out his wallet, threw $200 on the table, and looked at his wife. Elaine, I'd like to go home now. Dad, wait, Hazel started. No, I've heard enough. David, Riley, it was nice to meet you. He looked back at his daughter. And Hazel, you can find your own way home tonight. I'm not enabling this behavior anymore. One by one, the family started to leave. Lucas hugged me and whispered, I'm sorry, man. I had no idea. Sarah squeezed my shoulder. Tasha shook her head and said, this isn't who she used to be. Even Dorothy, who was halfway through her 3rd glass of wine, managed to say, that girl needs to learn some gratitude. Soon it was just me, Riley, and Hazel sitting at a table full of abandoned dinner plates and crumpled napkins. Happy birthday, I said softly. Hazel looked up at me with mascara running down her cheeks. Are you happy now? You've ruined my relationship with my family. I didn't ruin anything, Hazel. I just told them the truth. The truth? The truth is that you're a warehouse manager who drives a 10-year-old Honda and buys his clothes at Target. The truth is that I settled for less than I deserved because I thought love was supposed to be enough. Riley stood up and gathered her papers. The truth is that you had a husband who loved you, a family who supported you, and a job where you were respected for your actual abilities. And you threw it all away because you were ashamed of a life that most people would consider pretty good. She looked at me. Ready to go? I nodded and stood up. As we walked toward the exit, I heard Hazel call out behind us. David, wait. We can talk about this. We can work it out. I turned back one last time. She looked small sitting there alone at that big round table, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making. No, Hazel. We can't. Because you just told a room full of people that I'm beneath you. And honestly, I'm starting to think you're right. I am beneath you. I'm beneath the kind of person who lies to their coworkers, betrays their family's trust, and humiliates someone they claim to love just to make themselves feel better. Riley and I walked out into the cool night air, leaving Hazel alone with her birthday cake and the consequences of her choices. For the first time in 4 days, I felt like I could breathe again. I thought Romano's would be the end of it. I really did. After watching her family walk out on her, after seeing the look of complete devastation on her face when she realized the consequences of her actions, I figured Hazel would retreat, lick her wounds, and maybe, hopefully, do some serious soul-searching about the person she'd become. I was wrong. The first sign that things were about to get worse came Sunday morning when my phone started buzzing with notifications from Facebook. I rarely checked social media, but the sheer volume of alerts made me curious. When I opened the app, I felt my stomach drop. Hazel had gone nuclear. She'd posted a long, rambling status update about emotional abuse and narcissistic manipulation and finally finding the courage to leave a toxic relationship. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the photos. She'd dug up every unflattering picture of me from the last 2 years. The one where I was mid-sneeze at her cousin's wedding, the candid shot from Christmas morning where I was half asleep with bedhead, a blurry photo from a camping trip where I looked sweaty and exhausted. She'd posted them all with captions like, "This is what I wasted my youth on," and "Ladies, never settle for less than you deserve." My phone rang. "Malcolm, dude, are you seeing this?" "Yeah, I'm seeing it." She's lost her mind. This is insane, even for her. I scrolled through more posts. She'd shared screenshots of old text conversations between us, carefully edited to make me look controlling and unreasonable. A message where I asked her to let me know when she got home safe became evidence of my need to monitor her every move. A joke I'd made about her spending habits was presented as financial abuse. "What are you going to do?" Malcolm asked. "Nothing," I said, closing the app. Let her dig her own grave. But it didn't stop there. By Monday, she'd started messaging people directly, my coworkers, old friends from college, even my elderly neighbor Mrs. Chun, who'd somehow ended up on her friends list. She was sending them links to articles about emotional abuse, with personal messages about how she was finally ready to tell the truth about our marriage. The crazy thing was, it backfired immediately. People who actually knew me started pushing back. My buddy Jason from high school commented on one of her posts, "Dude, I've known David for 15 years. This doesn't sound like him at all." My coworker Sandra shared one of Hazel's posts with her own caption. "Having worked with David for 3 years, I can say this description doesn't match the man I know." But Hazel doubled down. She started a private Facebook group called Survivors of Emotional Manipulation and invited dozens of mutual acquaintances to join. She was painting herself as a brave survivor and me as some kind of monster who'd systematically destroyed her self-esteem over 2 years. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. Tuesday brought a new low. I was at work, trying to focus on a shipment manifest, when my boss Kevin called me into his office. "David, I need to ask you about something, and I want you to know I don't believe a word of it, but I have to follow protocol." My heart sank. "What happened?" "I got a call this morning from someone claiming to be your wife. She said you've been harassing her, showing up at her workplace, making threats. She wanted to know if we have any kind of employee assistance program for domestic violence perpetrators." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Kevin, I haven't seen Hazel since Saturday night. I haven't called her, texted her, or gone anywhere near her office. You can check my phone records, security cameras, whatever you need." Like I said, I don't believe it. But she sounded very convincing, very upset. She mentioned filing a restraining order. "A restraining order?" For what? That's what I asked. She said you've been stalking her and that she has evidence of your pattern of controlling behavior. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. Kevin, this is completely fabricated. She's trying to destroy my reputation because I exposed her lies to her family. I figured something like that was going on. But David, you need to be careful. If she does file papers, even false ones, it could complicate things at work. Maybe you should talk to a lawyer. That night, I was sitting in my kitchen eating a sad sandwich and wondering if I needed to hire an attorney I couldn't afford when someone started pounding on my apartment door. Not knocking, pounding, like they were trying to break it down. I looked through the peephole and saw Hazel standing in the hallway, her hair a mess, makeup smeared, holding what looked like a bottle of wine. David, I know you're in there. We need to talk. I didn't open the door. Hazel, you need to leave. You can't be here. You ruined my life. You turned my family against me. The least you can do is hear me out. Go home, Hazel. Call someone to pick you up. I don't have anywhere to go. My parents won't talk to me. Lucas blocked me on everything. Even my cousin thinks I'm a monster. The pounding got louder. I could hear Mrs. Chin's door opening down the hall. That's not my fault, Hazel. You did this to yourself. You self-righteous piece of shit. You think you're so perfect, don't you? You think you're better than me? The language she was using, the volume, the sheer desperation in her voice. It was like listening to a stranger. This wasn't the woman I'd married. This wasn't even the woman who'd humiliated me at dinner last week. This was someone completely unhinged. I'm calling security, I said through the door. Go ahead. Call them. Tell them how your crazy ex-wife is harassing you. Add it to your victim story. But she must have heard me on the phone because the pounding stopped. By the time building security arrived, you want to file a report? Yeah, I said. I think I have to. As I filled out the incident report, I realized this was what rock bottom looked like. Not the public humiliation at the restaurant, not the lies at work, not even the family dinner from hell. This was it, standing in my apartment hallway at midnight, documenting my wife's complete mental breakdown for a security report. But you know what? For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt sorry for the person she used to be, before whatever poison had gotten into her soul turned her into this. But the woman screaming in my hallway, threatening my job, trying to destroy my reputation, she was a stranger to me. And strangers don't get to ruin my life just because they've ruined their own. The next 2 weeks were like watching a car crash in slow motion. Hazel didn't go quietly into that good night. She went kicking and screaming and posting about it on every social media platform she could find. The photos were just the beginning. She started making TikTok videos, actual TikTok videos, about red flags in relationships and how to spot emotional manipulation. In every single one, she'd hold up another unflattering picture of me like evidence in a murder trial. Me eating pizza with my mouth open. Me looking confused at her office Christmas party. Me sleeping on the couch after a 12-hour shift. This is what settling looks like, ladies, she'd say to her phone camera. Don't make my mistakes. The comments section was brutal, but not in the way she expected. People started calling her out for posting pictures without permission. Others pointed out that the manipulation tactics she described sounded pretty normal, like asking where she was going when she left at 11 p.m. or suggesting we stick to a budget. Then she discovered Instagram Live. I only found out about these sessions because Malcolm started watching them like they were a reality TV show. He'd call me with updates. Dude, she's on live again, crying about how you never bought her flowers. Or, she's reading our old text messages on camera and analyzing them like a literature professor. The worst one was when she found our wedding album. She went through it page by page on live, pointing out all the ways I'd ruined our special day. How I looked uncomfortable in photos. I was nervous. How I didn't cry during the ceremony. I'm not much of a crier. How my groomsmen looked low class compared to her bridesmaids. They were my friends from work and college. Look at his face here, she told her audience of maybe 30 people, holding up our first dance photo. Does this look like a man who deserves me? But here's the thing about public meltdowns. Eventually, people get tired of watching them. Her followers started dropping off. The comments got meaner. Even her work friends stopped engaging with her posts. That's when she shifted tactics and started going after my reputation directly. She created fake accounts to leave bad reviews for my company, claiming I was unprofessional and incompetent. She found my LinkedIn profile, and started messaging my connections with warnings about my character. She even called my mom, to tell her she was concerned about my mental health and thought I needed professional help. My mother, bless her heart, listened politely for about 5 minutes before cutting her off. Hazel, honey, I've known my son for 32 years. If anyone needs professional help here, it's not him. The final straw came on a Thursday night when she showed up at my apartment building again. This time, she wasn't drunk. She was stone cold sober and carrying a cardboard box. She must have talked her way past the night security guard, because suddenly she was standing outside my door, not pounding this time, but knocking softly. David, I brought your stuff back. Can we please just talk for 5 minutes? I looked through the peephole. She looked terrible, thin, pale, like she hadn't been sleeping. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her again. Just leave the box by the door, Hazel. Please. 5 minutes. I want to apologize. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, but kept the chain lock engaged. She held up the box. It was full of things I'd forgotten at her place. My college sweatshirt, a few books, my electric toothbrush. I know I've been difficult lately, she said. But I miss you. I miss us. I looked at this woman who'd spent 2 weeks trying to destroy my life and felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even pity. Just emptiness. Hazel, I said quietly, there is no us anymore. There might never have been. I closed the door and turned off all the lights. When I checked an hour later, the box was gone. 3 months later, I'm sitting in my new apartment. Yeah, I moved, eating breakfast and watching the sun rise through windows that actually get decent light. It's smaller than the place Hazel and I shared, but it's mine. Every piece of furniture, every picture on the wall, every coffee mug in the cabinet, all chosen by me, for me. The job situation worked out better than I expected. After Hazel's little campaign to destroy my reputation, my boss Kevin actually offered me a promotion. Turns out, her fake reviews and crazy phone calls just made her look unstable, and me look like someone who needed their company's support. I'm managing the entire supply chain division now, with a salary that lets me afford this place without a roommate or a cosigner. Riley and I grab lunch once a week, usually at that same diner where she first told me the truth about Hazel's lies. She's become a real friend. The kind who calls when you haven't texted back in a few days, not because she's checking up on you, but because she genuinely wants to know how you're doing. Last week, she brought her boyfriend to lunch, a software engineer named Mark who makes terrible puns and obviously adores her. They're good together. Malcolm still sends me screenshots whenever Hazel posts something new, which is less and less these days. Last I heard, she'd moved back in with her parents and was seeing a therapist. Her social media presence has shifted from scorned woman seeking justice to inspirational quotes about healing and growth. I hope she actually is healing. I hope she figures out whatever broke inside her that made her think love was something to be ashamed of. Sometimes I get texts from fake numbers, usually just, hey, or can we talk? And I know it's her. I don't respond anymore. There's nothing left to say. She made her choice when she decided I wasn't good enough for her public image, and I made mine when I decided I was too good to accept that treatment. The funny thing is, I don't date much these days, but when I do, I tell women exactly what I do for a living right up front. I manage supply chains for a logistics company, I say. I coordinate shipping schedules and optimize inventory systems. And you know what? The right kind of woman finds that interesting. The right kind of woman asks follow-up questions and wants to understand how the world works. Hazel was wrong about one thing. A man like me doesn't need to be grateful for scraps of affection from someone who's embarrassed by his existence. A man like me deserves someone who's proud to be seen with him, someone who brags about his work ethic instead of inventing fictional careers to impress her friends. I'm stronger now. Quieter, maybe, but sharper. I know what I'm worth, and I know what I won't accept. And if the price of that knowledge was one awful dinner and 3 months of chaos, then it was worth every damn penny of that $428 bill. These days, when I smile, I mean it.